Okay, here I am with Josh Gagnon. Sorry, we were just talking about something offline, and I wanted to start the conversation with it just to get going here. Um, Carrie Newhoff and I are asking, what are we shooting? We're shooting an Art of Better Reaching course for people, and we shot it in March, and then some of the content became somewhat irrelevant because of COVID. So I'm going back to reshoot it so we can release it in probably by, I don't know, spring or something like that, 2021. So
What are you just talking about? Reaching people, even inside of COVID?
yeah, reaching people for Jesus in a post-Christian culture. So we're not going to talk about COVID as much because that'll date it. Um,
True.
but it's yeah, how do you reach people in the post-Christian culture that we're living in right now? Theology, practicality, all that stuff. So
What about the art of better teaching? You do that too, right?
we did the Art of Better Preaching.
Preaching. Okay.
So obviously you took the course, and
Yeah, that's how I, have been, succeeding in life.
that's been actually crazy to hear the awesome stories of that. So anyway, okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am on with the distinguished Josh Gagnon, who wrote a book last year. Oh, nice. I like it. Called It's Not Over. Not over.
Not over. It's not over.
Fast and sweet. Sweet is over. You should have
It's
spelled
over.
and it's all about dreams and whatever. Look, ministry. What are you doing since COVID? You run a big church, multiple sites,
Yeah.
tons of leaders, tons of staff. What has life been like since COVID hit and you had to switch up? So he's in Boston and Tampa. So
Yeah. It's been a whirlwind. It's been a whirlwind of just trying to, we haven't really lost steam as far as the church goes because everybody who's coming just goes online. And frankly, I think they probably like it better.
Sure.
And so I'm not sure people are going to come back to physical locations would be more my concern.
Right.
But I mean, leading the staff through that change, of course, our location pastors, things look a lot different today. My job looks a lot different today. It did create a little bit of margin because, you go to the office and there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of playing, there's a lot of relationships. Sure. When you erase all that, you're just kind of hanging out, doing the work, it's done quick. I started a drywall company.
So what you're saying is your ministry work was inefficient until COVID hit.
Yeah, I became an efficient minister as soon as it
Hold on. You started a drywalling company?
I did.
You got a little side hustle, huh?
I got a side hustle going. I got a few side hustles going. So just maximizing that time. Played a little bit of golf this year. My boys are avid golfers, and so yeah, just right. I mean, it's changed a lot. I think it took everybody outside their comfort zone. It reminded us of how little control we actually have.
Right.
And it reminded us that, for me, it reminded me just the importance of even relationships because you're an extrovert, I'm an introvert. And so together we kind of seem extroverted, but I'm an introvert. And so it reminded me the importance of.
Let's dig into that for a sec. So yeah, so It's Not Over by the book. It's fantastic. Let's talk about that for a sec. You're an introvert and yet here's an interesting thing because I want to try to extract a principle here in regard to leadership or life or whatever.
Yeah.
Yet you're a guy, so I'm an extrovert, and yet I do not network well, and I know you don't necessarily either with other people, but here you have all these relationships of famous Christians that people kind of know, right? The Craig Groeschels and the Gordon McDonalds and these big names in the Christian world, and you somehow shoved yourself into their life and got their attention and learned from them and hang out with them. So tell us how that happens for a person, whether that's business or like, whatever. You're trying to make these relationships. How did you do that as an introvert who might not be motivated to do such a thing?
Yeah, they would probably tell you that a lot of my friends would probably tell you that I've gotten text messages from people that you would know, and they've said, like, I wish you'd keep me more up to date in your life. And so they actually recognize that it's uncomfortable for me to continue to feel like I'm reaching out to people and a nuisance to people. I think the one thing that I do well is I honor. I think that I send a lot of thank yous. I send a lot of gifts. I send a lot of just honor, and I ask a lot of questions. So a lot of the people that I get around is I don't talk as much as I do listen, and I ask questions. And so when you ask people questions, I think that everybody wants to be heard. And so one of the secrets of one of the secrets for everybody listening is if you want to be around people that are influential, just ask questions because they want to influence. And so, just ask questions, be in their life, bring honor, don't become a nuisance, don't become a pain in their rear end. Speak highly, protect. I think
Yeah,
those
it's
things
great.
yeah.
So It's Not Over. Talk about it. It's a book about dreams. We have people listening, watching. I don't know. I haven't posted anything for a year on this
Since our last one
on this format since. So I'm sure there's for all 18 watchers of this, they have dreams that God birthed in their heart, have totally got messed up in life, feel like they can't go anywhere. So even if you rehash some of the conversation we've had before, talk to us about where this whole thing, It's Not Over, comes from, and how to like get through when our dreams seem to be totally dashed and done.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest places to ever live is in a place where you feel like tomorrow or next year will be no different than the broken year you're living in.
Right.
Like there's such a place of loneliness there. If you think about it, Mark, that's what drives a lot of our passion, is to teach the gospel and to teach that Jesus came to give us life and to give us a life of abundance. And, it's not this pie in the sky conversation where I say everything's going to be great in life and you're not going to go through persecution and pain. No, that's part of the prescription of life. Jesus told us that as well. But I'm just not convinced that Jesus just desires for us to die and get to heaven. I believe that Jesus desires for us to live right now with life and purpose. And we go through this thing called life, and daily we're seeing people who are just living broken. They're living broken inside of relationships. They're living broken by their past mistakes. They're living broken by a dead-end career that they hate but can't get out of. They're living broken by, addictions, and they're living so much brokenness surrounds all of us. And at some point, most people give up on the potential of tomorrow. They give up on that potential of believing that tomorrow can be greater than yesterday. And in my book, I talk about just the danger of living there. I talk about the story of Lazarus. And one of my favorite moments in that story is, of course, Jesus doesn't show up on time as far as they're concerned. Jesus shows up late. And one of the moments in that story is when Jesus goes to the tomb and he tells Mary and Martha to move the stone. And it was before he brings Lazarus to life. And one of the coolest parts of that moment is Jesus could have moved the stone. I mean, it's Jesus. He's about to bring someone back to life. But he asks Mary and Martha to do it. And I think it's because, for me, what that says to me is even when we feel like our dream is dead and Jesus is late, we still have to activate our faith in order to see our miracle. So Jesus asked them to move the stone. He didn't move the stone. I think it's because he wanted to see them participate in the miracle. And then Lazarus comes out of the out of the tomb, of course. And then Jesus says, unwrap him. And for me, that was a vision of Jesus saying, it's not enough for him just to breathe. I want to unwrap him from the perception of death. I want you to take the grave clothes. Other translation says remove him from the grave clothes. It's not enough for Lazarus to just breathe, get the death off of him. And I think that's really what Jesus would scream into all of our lives. His presence, his goodness would scream into us, work alongside of your miracles. I may not have showed up yet. And frankly, you may not even ever see what you hoped you would see. However, I can still bring dead things back to life. And don't live as if you're wrapped in grave clothes. And so that's really the whole entire big idea of the book is to kind of shake off the yesterdays and trust God for greater tomorrows. But it's not this pie in the sky thing where it's like, all just like, oh, everything's going to be great. No, the reality is we are promised pain on earth. We're just promised not to have to walk through it alone.
Yeah. So talk about the title. It's Not Over. Where did that come from?
Came from a visit to a prison. My pastor friend, I had pastor friend for about 10 years. He had been in ministry for 20 years, and he made a horrible mistake. And I was with him through the whole process. When he got arrested, I was with him the months leading up to his arrest. We'd go for walks together. And finally, he had to turn himself in and went to prison. And he was facing 20 to 40 years in prison. And and he ended up getting much less than that. and everybody in the church, all of the pastors, all of our common friends, everybody turned their back on him. And I can understand. He did something that you shouldn't do, and I can understand that. However, man, when I love somebody, I love them, and so he understood he made a mistake, but I wasn't going to turn my back on him. And so I showed up at prison. I was the first person to ever visit him in prison, as soon as he could have visitors. And we talked, and I hugged him at the end of our conversation, and I told him, "Hey, listen, I just want you to know it's not over." And he looked back at me with tears in his eyes, and he said, "I'm not sure I believe that." And as I was driving home, I saw people, just working out in their yards and pumping gas. And it was just like this impression of the Holy Spirit just speaking to my heart and saying, "Josh, listen, your friend's in prison and he feels that way, but there's actually a prison out here. And it's just this prison of believing that our greater days are behind us, that our tomorrows are not going to be greater than our yesterdays." And that's really where the book was kind of birthed. It was birthed in that passion and that desire to see people, no matter where they've been, no matter how dark their days have become, to see them live with hope. I mean, when you lose hope, Mark, come on, losing hope, that's a dangerous place to be. And so, that's where we got the title of the book.
Yeah, and you see that in people's lives in the sense of whether that's, psychologists looking into people in, concentration camps or whatever, without believing that there's something, like even in this COVID moment, it's like if the government just said, "Hey, look, you're done, you're going to be in your house for the rest of your life," it'd be like,
well, suicide rates are higher. I was just reading suicide rates are way up right now.
So let's talk about that. You're an American. You just had me in your podcast riffing, me, making me explain political things. So you just got through two Muppets yelling at each other, trying to get elected, and like those two.
We're still not sure how that looks, right?
So from an American perspective, obviously Canadians, what are you seeing? What are your concerns? Are you happy with any of that? Like what's?
Yeah, no, I really we get the typical American is very embarrassed by this.
Right.
It's very embarrassing to see what's happening in our political climate. It's very embarrassing. I don't care where you stand. I don't care what party you're for. It's embarrassing that a great country, I won't say it's one of the greatest or one of the greatest, but I do think it's a great country. I love the country that I live in. Yeah. It's embarrassing that this is what our country has turned into. And what's really embarrassing is that the two nominees are close to 80 years old and about to go into a nursing home after they leave. I think Biden will be 80. It'll be 84 or 86 years old if he serves eight years, which is the maximum you can serve here. Can you imagine 84-year-old president of the United States of America? So for me.
But you could have great leaders who are old. It's the question of is this the best?
But you got. I mean, not just that. 84 years old. There's no way you can be your piss and vinegar like you used to. There's no way that you're like you have the energy. At some point, you got to put that thing into like a slower gear. You know what I mean?
The president's only a 9-to-5 job.
But. I mean, it's not a matter of if I like Joe Biden or if I like
time. There's probably a nap time at the White House.
There's going to need to be. There's going to need to be a lot of nap time. So, I mean, I think we're all kind of frustrated, and it's not about liking Joe Biden or Donald Trump, whatever. For me, I'm surprised that is the best that this country has.
Right. Okay. Talk just real quick about what do you think about Canadian? Like, what are your classic thought? I mean, half the year you're down in Florida, so you're deep down there. They've never come north of the.
Yeah, I think when the typical American thinks about Canadians, I think the typical thinking is socialism. I think the typical thinking is peaceful. Mm-hmm. I think the typical thinking is non-violent, passive, very passive.
Right.
Would rely on us to protect them.
We got canoes, all kinds of stuff.
No, but I think honestly, I like my brother's moving to Canada because he hates America.
Really?
Yeah, he just got his place in Montreal.
Crazy.
And so I think for the most part, Americans really respect Canadians. Honestly,
Yeah.
I think if we could blend our two cultures, would be an amazing country.
Yeah.
I think if we could, yeah,
Yep.
if you guys could maybe get, I think we could add a little spice to your life, and I think you guys could add a little common sense at times.
Yeah, 100%. Good way of putting it. So I got a few more minutes here only. So let's talk about leader. You run like 14 leadership podcasts. Give us a couple leadership tips for the leaders watching, listening to this around what the next year looks like. What do you think the big 2 or 3 things that leaders need to be doing?
Yeah,
In
I
20?
think making decisions that you're willing to stand by after COVID is wise for leaders. I haven't made one decision in this season that we won't be able to continue to maintain doing in the next season, and so I wanted to make sure there was no sidewards energy being spent.
Right.
And so we didn't do anything for COVID. We just got everything better for during COVID
Yeah.
and things that will continue after COVID.
Yeah.
I think clarity in communication and in not always having the answer. So one of the mistakes I made early on is because I had no answers of where in the world we were going and what in the world we were going to be doing. I got a little bit silent because I didn't know what to say at the beginning. And what I learned is I don't have to have necessarily the answer, but my voice is still very important. And so it's not losing your voice as a leader even when you don't have the answer.
Right.
I think people want to hear the leader's voice even if they have nothing new to say. The
Yeah.
comfort of the shepherd's voice, the comfort of the leader's voice is still important. And I think maintaining vision even when it feels like the start dates are unknown.
Yeah.
That's been hard for me. I don't know about you, but like planning new launches and planning new agendas and planning new moments and like those big hype moments that create momentum.
Yeah.
Like I live by that. That's my personality. I think that's something I thrive with inside of. It's been super hard for me to live in a season. It's almost been hard for me. You could almost say like the biggest thing I brought to leadership was vision and the ability to communicate it. And it's hard now because it's like I have buildings we've built that we have never opened because
Right.
of COVID.
Yeah.
I have locations we plan to launch that I don't. So how do you cast a clear vision when you have no idea what tomorrow looks like? I think you rest in the why over the what. And so in this season, the vision has been more why than it is what we're going to do, because it can be both. I think when you communicate both the why and the what, that's great vision. Right now, it's just been pretty much all why because I don't know what the heck we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And we found that too. Our whole thing is like, Jesus didn't cancel church planting when COVID hit. And so we're planning. We got one in Winnipeg, one in Toronto, both of them, starting to build a core team. We got the leader, we got the pastor, but it's like, yeah, but when do you
doing home group meetings? Like just meeting in houses?
Yeah, exactly. Just connection point, launch teams gathering on Zoom and whatever. But it's like, when do you launch? And it's like, well, that's not really the plan right now. We got to figure it out. It'd be nice by fall and nice by, whatever, but we'll kind of figure it out. So it's hard to plan for those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Thanks, buddy. So much for your time, your leadership. You're doing an awesome job. And let's do this again soon.
I love you, my friend.
You too, bud.